Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now today what I wanted to talk about was my wrecked Honda Civic Hatchback. And the funny thing is, I've actually owned quite a few of these Honda Civics just throughout my whole entire life. I would like to say that I've owned maybe double digits of these cars, and it was mostly just to buy, fix, and sell. And at that time, that's what I was kind of doing at the time. And I've owned the sedans, I've owned the coupes, but my all-time favorite, honestly, is gonna be the hatchbacks. And for this story, this is particularly a 1996 Honda Civic Hatchback. So the whole reason that I came upon this car was actually cruising over at the Copart auctions. I was actually looking at a few other cars, but in this instance, this one caught my attention. As I was just walking down the lane, I saw it, and you know, for a lot of people, they would shy away when they see the damage. And as you can see from the photos, it was not, it wasn't like a little love tap. It was a pretty big hit. And because the car was lowered, I think it slid underneath something that was a little bit taller, just due to the fact that the bumper was still in pretty good shape, but it was mostly the radiator support that got hit, and a little bit of the fender, and the hood got crunched, and the lights completely gone, as well as the grille. And when I first saw this car, the first thought that came to me was, is the frame good? And luckily I was there, and it was a preview day, so I was able to like actually walk over and see the condition of the car. And when I did that, I actually noticed that the frame rails are actually straight. So when you're looking at a wrecked car like this, you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at the frame rails, because if those get bent or disoriented or deformed in any, you know, sort of shape or form, it will really be very difficult to fix without you having to go to a body shop and then they have to move the frame. But in this case, the majority of the damage was actually in the radiator support. So for me, I saw a lot of potential in it. And you know, for an old Civic, a lot of people would probably shy away from this, but for me, I love a Civic with a manual transmission. For those people that don't know, Honda makes some of the best manual transmissions in the business, especially in the 90s and 2000s. I mean, if you could find any Honda from the 90s or 2000s with a manual transmission, it's going to be a really fun car. So end up buying it, and I bid it up to like $325 or something like that, like hilariously cheap. So even if I ran it off a cliff, you know, it's not that big a deal. I'll take the hit. But I saw potential in it, and I definitely wanted to try bringing it back together, because it was definitely going to turn into like a junkyard contender. And that's another huge thing too, is these cars, they definitely get taken to the junkyard and they get parted out so easily, and that's a huge reason why so many of them get stolen. I think it's one of the top most stolen cars in the country. But getting past the point, so I have Sergey. He's kind of my towing guy. He's towed a lot of cars for me, so he brings back the car, and we're taking a look at it. And the biggest thing is, I noticed that the radiator is completely destroyed, and a lot of the body panels need to be replaced. Biggest thing just being the hood and the grills and the headlights. But it doesn't matter if I go out and buy those parts, because I have to do something about the radiator support. This is the part that kind of houses everything in together. So if you don't have a straight radiator support, you won't be able to put the headlights on, etc., etc. So usually if you're going to pull something like a radiator support, which I've done in the past, is there's so many different ways about going about it, right? Is like you could go and have somebody pull it. You could tie it to a tree and reverse it. I mean, this is like total DIY mechanic stuff. But funny enough, all I did with this car is I literally just put on like these industrial sized gloves. They're almost like welding gloves. They're super thick and durable. And I just went to it, and just out of pure frustration, I just grabbed the core support itself and I just started pulling like a crazy person. And I remember my dad was just looking at me, and he's like, there's no way that you're gonna be able to pull this thing. And you know, luckily, since I was still young and I was able to just have so much energy, I just started yanking at this thing like crazy, and the core support luckily started coming back. And it was an amazing feeling. So we kept pulling, and a little bit, you know, hammering here, massaging here, kind of working with the heat gun. I was able to bring back the core support. So it was huge to be able to do that. So after we got the core support straight, what I did is I ran over to the local pick and pull, because I saw at the time they had a red Civic, and I was so excited, because huge costs that will come into play, especially if you're rebuilding cars like this, is paint. one of the top things you'll run into is having to pay so much money for paint. So I was really trying to avoid this as much as possible. So I see that it has a red hood, so I go running to it. I have my little Milwaukee electric ratchet, and it's already got the 12mm on it, and we just start taking off the hinges, and I go out and I buy the parts for it and stuff. And after that, it was pretty straightforward. There was a little bit of having to align the fenders. All you have to do is really just loosen up everything, and it's just kind of like it's almost like sculpting in a weird way, but you're doing it with a car. So I was able to kind of piece everything back together. I even had the grill. What I did is, since the tabs off of it got broken, I used like zip ties and like some hot glue. I mean, I've done this so many different times with so many different cars, so it wasn't that big a deal to put all this stuff back together, right? So after I put all this together, the car is starting to come together and starting to look really good. And I was hunting Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and OfferUp and stuff like that just to find a headlight. I was able to source that, and for the most part, that was it. And I took it to State Patrol. It passed the inspection. It drives great. And for me, I do this stuff as mostly just like a hobby, right? So when I had this car, I drove it for a couple months, almost every single day. This was the car that I drove, and it was really fun. And the thing is too, since it was lowered, you know, you definitely get like looks from the tuners and stuff, and I'm pretty sure whoever had it before must have had a really cool set of wheels and tires. But of course, you know, if you're going to be taking a wrecked car to the auction, you just swap them out with some cheap steelies. So it was sitting on just like some cheap steelies, but you know, for anybody that really wanted to invest the money and make it into something more than just what it was, I mean, the potential was there. And even in the way it was really fun to drive. It was super responsive with the steering and stuff like that. They did put headers on it, but luckily they didn't put like a fart cannon of an exhaust in the back, because you know, those, I don't know why those Civics are so plagued with so many people that just want to put a giant exhaust on these things, and then it turns into the meme where you're the guy that's driving the Civic at 3 a.m. and nobody wants to be that guy, and I'm not going to be that guy. So I am not that guy. But anyways, I had my fun with it, and ended up posting it, and I still remember that the guy that bought it from me, and I was very transparent with him about the whole history of the car and where it's been and stuff like that, and he was totally cool with it. The only thing that he was really worried about, just from seeing other people that are also selling their Civics, is that he was slowly coming around people that have just absolutely abused these Civics. So he was pretty adamant about asking me, like, have you been hard on the car? Have you beaten on it and stuff like that? And for everybody that really knows me, I totally drive like a grandpa. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not a big speed racer or anything like that. So I was pretty good to the car, and I told him that, and we took it on the highway, and we took it around the block, and I even showed him how to use the Bluetooth stereo and stuff like that, and he loved it. So I ended up selling it. So it was a win-win situation, you know. I got the experience of being able to put this car back together and kind of rescued it, but it was more of like one of those catch and release kind of situations, right? Where it's like you catch the fish and you release it. So in this case, I caught a junky car and released it. So something like that. I put a little bit of money in my pocket, I had my fun with it, and then I was on to the next one. So yeah, that's all I really got for the story for today. So if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.